Hi, this is Alan, and thank you for coming back to my next podcast. Today's topic is constitutional amendment. I think it's time we have one, and there's absolutely no reason why the Constitution should stay a dry, stale work. It was designed to be flexible and keep up with the times, and it should be, and it hasn't been. So I propose we make a few changes. And here are some of the ones that I really want to see change very, very quickly, because I think it'll benefit our society in many ways. First one, internet voting. There's absolutely no reason why we cannot vote on the internet. The environment and structure is secure enough for ATM, direct deposits. It's good enough for voting. Yes, there are lots of hackers, but we're also very sophisticated at counter-hacking and cybersecurity. Nothing is foolproof. The current voting, just ask a bunch of folks in the backwaters of Mississippi, Alabama, if they think the voting is all pure and perfect. Of course it isn't. Internet voting, far better. Most people have access to an appliance that they can get onto the web. I think phones are ubiquitous now with access to the web at many sources. It is far easier for the most economically disadvantaged, aka a poor person, to get a smartphone and to go to Starbucks or public library, any facility to get free Wi-Fi, take 5-10 minutes to vote on this than it is to schlep all the way to a public library and deal with many of the issues of the poor who cannot make it to the voting booths and polls and so forth. Digital certificates on the phones, the technology is there. It's a matter of political will. And the reason it's not being done now is that those in the current political status quo, regardless of the political flavors, fear the change, because who will do most of the change? The young. And they fear it. All political entities do that. Anyway, internet voting. In this coming election, no reason why we can't do it, and we should force them to do that. Next set of changes. I want to augment and reduce the federal government in its structure. I think we need several new cabinet positions, and we need to reorient and reduce or shape some of the old ones that are not as current. The two positions that I would like to see at the cabinet level, secretariat positions, one is a chief technology officer that serves directly under the president, and the second one is a chief privacy officer. I think those two positions are absolutely key and critical to the advancement of our technology to leap forward in the way governance is provided to the people. It will reduce costs. It will bring the economies and efficiencies together in a way that's exponentially increasing now. So I think those positions are critical. Every major successful corporation has those two positions. There's absolutely no reason why the U.S. government should not work in that capacity. The military and the intel shops already do so. They're thinking a little faster than the civilians. So the civilians have to do that. Next thing, I propose a constitutional amendment where we cap the DoD defense budget at 33% of the entire budget, the federal budget. Currently, and this is not an accurate number, but I think it hovers in and around 50% or something of that nature, or high 40%. Way too high, 33%. And by mandating that into the Constitution, it'll avoid a lot of the political struggles that strangle governance. And just look at what we have on the Hill and have had for many years. Just general incompetence. When you legalize the change in the Constitution, you mandate the political environment. And to deal with that budget issue, if it's mandatory at 33% cap, that'll have tremendous ripple effects on foreign policy, sort of on ethical arguments that we discuss. What is it we do with our military, and how we concentrate the resources truly on defense rather than offense. My suggestion. So 33% cap on military DoD spending. And that covers the intel shops. None of these black classified budgets. Everything up in the open. Also, in the budget works, I recommend that we spend at a minimum, again, this is in a constitutional amendment, minimum probably no more than 5% of the budget for exploration and scientific discovery. Pound for pound, research shows that for every dollar we invest in either the space program or oceanography, in research in that area, for every dollar we get 12 back, if not more so. It makes sense. Just look at the pacemakers and all sorts of innovations, microwaves, you name it, on and on. Space program, other scientific programs. The more money we invest in it, we get literally tenfold, if not more. So for research, R&D, definitely 5% of the budget. Medical research, 15% of our budget should be mandated for medical research and development. It shouldn't be the purview strictly of the pharmaceuticals. Of course, they're a huge partner in that. But we absolutely need to have federal funding at the 15% of the budget. It's a huge amount of money. But the return, the ROI on that in terms of reducing health costs is immeasurable. It'll generate the economy, it'll provide a lot of jobs. It's a smart thing to do. 15% of the budget, 1/5, goes from medical R&D. We also need to augment our Constitution to having digital privacy and intellectual ownership of data and metadata. And that belongs to the citizen. I'll repeat that. Digital privacy on the data and the metadata belongs to the citizen, but it should also be controlled by the citizen and sold, if you so wish. Best example, you buy a new car. It has a variety of computational devices in it that capture and measure data. Where you go, how fast you go, how many accidents you have, on and on and on. You should own the intellectual property of that data. You should be able to determine who or what gets that data, and if you so wish, sell it. There's value in it. Obviously, that's one of the reasons why it's captured. We need a constitutional amendment to force into law ownership of the data and the metadata about you. That'll revolutionize the way medical care is issued, life insurance, home mortgages, credit, employment, interviews, a variety of things that are being used and utilized right now in ways that in some ways are very good, but also in some ways that are very detrimental to a free and open society. Ownership of the data, the individual, he or she maintains it. If you want to sell it, fine, make a buck for it. No problem at all. In conjunction with that, the Fifth Amendment to self-incrimination has to be updated to include incrimination data from your own appliances, devices, or systems that you use or own. You should not be held to a different standard than the protections on the Fifth Amendment guarantee. And right now the law is very fuzzy and poorly written, if that, on how you can self-incriminate yourself, redundant but true, from data that either you generate from your appliances, and that should never be used against you. Base case example is in India. An MRI was forced against a woman who was a suspect in the poisoning of her boyfriend. She did not want to do it. She was forced to take an MRI, scanned her brain. At the time, certain images were flashed onto a screen, and she was watching the screen, and the images were those of the crime scene that theoretically only the criminal would have known. And the MRI detected positive cognition of memories on that. And based solely on that, an Indian court convicted her of a high crime. I think it was capital murder. That's a kind of example, somewhat extreme, but nevertheless very, very important, that we should not be susceptible to self-incrimination and should be protected from that from our digital sources, either what we own or others use to capture our information. Another example is a woman in the Washington, D.C. area who was driving a high-performance automobile in the dark. She was an attorney, actually. Struck an individual at night. She was driving at a high rate of speed, killed the pedestrian on the road. She stayed at the crime scene, called the law enforcement, the Virginia State Police officer who came by and investigated the accident, determined that it was due to negligence and high speed, and demanded from the owner the keys so he could retrieve the data module from her new automobile. And the owner of the automobile, the woman who killed the pedestrian, refused. Being an attorney, she recognized her right to protection, and she said, "No, that's my property. I own it. You can't have it. Do you have a warrant?" The investigating officer said, "I don't need a warrant. Here's a state code." Took it, and based upon the data that was retrieved from the onboard computer, the black box, if you will, of her car, she was convicted. It was the only evidence introduced into her criminal trial. She was convicted of negligent homicide or manslaughter. I can't remember. It's about 5-6 years old. That information should not be used against you if you own that information. She thought she owned that information, and she appealed to the Virginia Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled against her, saying that the law was not clear. Plus, the user agreements, when she bought the car, indicated that the manufacturer of the automobile owned that information. And as a general principle, the manufacturers, with a warrant or even without a warrant, will gladly give that information to law enforcement authorities. We need protection from that. Next item I want to see in our constitutional amendment: digital surveillance on citizens strictly prohibited in all forms. No surveillance, and I'm talking cyber, not just video and just cyber surveillance. Court orders and so forth. I think even in the name of national security, I think there's far greater loss of our privacy and our individuality as free citizens by allowing digital surveillance. Law enforcement is pretty good. We don't need them in our cyber world, and they're there already. Just go to Fort Meade, you'll find out. Also on that line, I want to eliminate the Secret Intelligence Court that does absolutely no value whatsoever except keep our freedoms down and makes our government less transparent. Good democracies eliminate that court. Hasn't really served us well. I also believe that citizenship should be purchased. You want to come here? You want to work in this country? Terrific. Buy citizenship. Have a guest worker program. There's no such thing as illegal immigrants. There are people who are miserable and starving, who have nothing back home, and there are those in another location that have a lot more comfortable existence. It is human nature for those who are starving and miserable and hopeless to migrate to where it's better. That's all immigration is. You're never going to stop it. It's ridiculous. It's human to try and better yourselves, to something better for your family, your children, than to stay back home under misery, tyranny, whatever. That's immigration. The idea that it's illegal is an insult to our intelligence and miserable to the people who are caught in that. So you make a citizenship a commodity that you can purchase. And when you purchase something like that, there's certain things that you can deal with. First of all, if you purchase citizenship, you have to pay taxes. You come here to work, you pay taxes. Right now, the undocumented migrants, there's a whole $1 billion economy that's not taxed. It's there. People make money all the time. We don't see a nickel of it. And of course, the social costs of feeding and maintaining and repairing and healthcare and so forth, incarceration, all that stuff, tax citizenship. And you can make it provisional. You know, just because you're born doesn't mean that you'll have citizenship for life. No, it shouldn't. You should have to earn your citizenship. One way you can lose your citizenship is what I would call the first strike. If you're convicted of a violent crime, I'm not talking selling meth at the corner or stealing, a book or something, but if you beat another human being to an inch of their life, we don't need or want you in our society. You're just a toxic drop in the gene pool. First strike, out you go. You lose your citizenship and you're out of this country. I want to do several things. First of all is I want to outsource incarceration. The prison industry, out of control in this country. 30 years ago, we had 300,000 people under incarceration. Now we have over 3 million under incarceration. It's a business. It's a for-profit entity. I think 1 out of 3 African American males in this country between the age of, 16 to 36 are either incarcerated or under parole. In some way, they're meshed in the criminal justice system. Ridiculous. And it's a huge industry, money maker, and that's one of the drivers. There are other drivers. We can have a political discussion till the cows come home. Why so many, not just African Americans, but different subsets of society is incarcerated. And let's be honest, you get all the justice you can afford. This country is replete, just replete with examples from OJ down. If you can afford justice, you'll get it. If you can't, if you're just some poor guy, you can't afford Johnny Cochran, man, you're lost. And that's horrible. So, I say outsource all the prison outside this country. If you're convicted in a violent crime, you lose your citizenship. Can't buy it back. Eliminate the for-profit prison industry. Just end it right there. It'll reduce so much of the horrible human nature that greed makes with human collateral. Get rid of that. And definitely first strike for violent offenders. If you're a violent person, regardless of your socioeconomics, regardless of the background, if you're violent, you don't belong in this society. And we can update our criminal codes for all sorts of other transgression, but just for the violent crimes, rape, murder, robbery, assault, horrible crimes against persons, not so much property, but persons. No place for you in our society. Gone, out of here. Sundown parole, as they used to call it. Not a new innovation. It's been around in this country for many years. And the last thing that I want to legalize in an amendment to our Constitution is to legalize all drugs and narcotics. This is an old argument. It has been discussed until the cows came home. It does several things. When you legalize all narcotics, the data is clear. You don't increase addictions. In fact, if anything, you reduce it. You don't urge and encourage people to try. You don't ruin nice little kids and turn them into homeless addicts. They do that by themselves, regardless whether it's legal or not. All you do is you remove the criminal element. It's a billion-dollar industry. You legalize it, and on the spot, things change overnight. Mayor Schmoke from Baltimore, hell of a name, did that years ago, a couple of decades ago, in the city of Baltimore. It was a novel experiment, and it worked well when it was there. The city of Amsterdam, you can look at their heroin epidemics and misery that they had in the 70s, and they had a different idea. They legalized the narcotics. They gave away free hypes, free sterile needles. If you needed to get high, whatever your needs are, you just go to a pharmacist. A doctor gave you a quick look, did a quick blood test to make sure that he knew or she knew your dosage, your weight. You eliminated all the overdoses. And people were injecting themselves with products that are medically synthesized, not cooked in the back kitchen of some horrible drug factory or, wherever. Pure drugs. And when you look at the Amsterdam death by overdose, they dropped. If you look at the social crime, just the sheer cost of dollars of street crimes, burglaries, the violent crimes that these end users would commit in order to buy their illegal drugs. If you just show up, they'll give it to you in Amsterdam and many other places they deploy this. You want free narcotics, they'll give them to you. They'll make sure that it won't kill you. It'll be a safe and clean place to shoot up. In my philosophy, in any group in society, regardless of the culture, ethnicity, what have you, where you live, it doesn't matter. A certain percentage of the population, in my opinion, are addicts. They have an addictive either gene or addictive personality or both or something else. I don't understand the pharmacology or the DNA structure of addiction, but I know it's there. And you can do what you want to. You're not going to stop it. The constitutional amendment to ban alcohol is a perfect example. It's ridiculous. Legalize all the drugs, all the narcotics. Tax it. Watch your crime rates drop drastically, as they did in Amsterdam and many other cities. Watch the tax revenue go up. Watch the overdoses drop to very low levels. And it's a far better economic environment as well as moral. Rare to get both one on one. Anyway, those are my ideas. Love to know what you think. Just hit me up on YouTube. Tell me what you think. Thank you so much.